Good evening and welcome to our 2023-24 budget hearings. Welcome to our audience here for it. I'm Randy Squire, proud superintendent of Coxsackie-Athens Schools, and I'm going to turn it over to Ryan Palmer, our administrator for business and finance, who's going to give a summary of our proposed budget that'll go to the voters here in a couple weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Squire. So like we said, we're just going to go over an overview of what it is we're voting on May the 16th. And we will get down to the nitty-gritty of as much as we can and then open it up for some Q&A to the folks here in the audience. Okay, so we've got three things that we're really voting on that we're going to touch base on in this presentation. The first, of course, is the general fund budget. That is at a $36,030,000 amount, which is under this year's tax cap. Proposition number 2 is voting on the establishment of a capital reserve that we will refer to as the 2023 capital reserve that will hold a maximum threshold at $5 million and a probable term of 10 years. And then finally, we are asking voters to vote on the Board of Education members. We've got 4 community members running for 3 seats. Those community members include Ina Griffin-Gilzon, Sam Anderson, Jamie Dorr, and Tara Bachner. This presentation is also available to everyone on our district website. So, proposition number 1 is our general fund budget. We are bringing to you a balanced budget that at the amount of $36,030,000. This is a 3.80% overall budget increase. The hit to the tax levy will be a 2.93% increase. This year's tax levy total was 3.02. That was the maximum levy amount. We again came in under that. If you recall, last year we had a tax levy maximum of 3.21% and had a 2.92% increase. This year was at 3.02 maximum. We're coming in at a 2.93 proposed tax levy increase. Our expenditure budget is at $36,030,000 compared to our anticipated revenues at $36,030,000. Okay, nice balanced budget. Expenditures at a closer look. We've got our salaries, fringes, debt, BOCES, transportation, and other. And off to the right there, you can see what is inclusive in that other. We've got our supplies, equipment services, building services, sped tuition, both at private and public locations, and maintenance. Those are some of the big ones. Just to touch base on a few of these, we do see an increase in other because primarily of the cost of special education in our private placements. And then we also saw an increase in BOCES. The good news about increase in BOCES is we get added aid on back to us at the start of the next year. Okay. If you folks in the audience have any questions, I'm just going to repeat them, and then we'll go through them. Yes? Fringes. So the question is, what is fringes? Fringes include health insurance, ERS, TRS contributions, FICA, Medicare contributions, TRS and ERS, yep, retirement, okay. On the revenue side, we've got an appropriated fund balance this year of $1.775 million, which is an increase of $500,000. One of the reasons that we suggested to increase that by $50,000 is because of the supply chain issues we're experiencing with some of our capital projects. We would have had an additional $50,000 of revenue this year. We don't because of the delay. We do anticipate that next year. We wanted to account for it this year. So that number will essentially be transferred to another section in the budget next year as opposed to seeing an addition in the budget next year. Appropriated fund balance is us utilizing money that we underspent in years past that we have in accounts, money market accounts, savings accounts, etc. State aid, we did see a nice increase in that. Other revenues, again, you'll see at the bottom there, it includes tuitions from other districts for students coming to our school district. You've got pilot monies, Medicaid, interfund transfers, etc. I mean, appropriated reserves. That's just other monies that we see in the form of revenue to the district. And then there's the big one. There's the tax cap levy, which again we see as a 2.93% increase. Anybody that knows me by now knows I like my pie charts because it shows me where everything is being distributed. We did our best to show it. I know it's somewhat foggy here in person, but your two biggest sections there in the dark blue are your salaries and your property tax cap levies. And year to year, there's not much of a change in these as far as the percentage of contributions towards the sum of the entirety of the budget. Okay, we've got our big five. Our big five include special education, salaries, health and dental insurance, retirement, transportation. With those, we did see the biggest increase in special education at 4.18% and in health and dental insurance. It was anticipated going into this year that we would see significant increases in health and dental insurance coming out of the pandemic. A lot more folks are returning to the doctor's offices, and frankly, the charge to COVID is driving those prices up as well. So we did see a significant increase there. Budget to budget personnel additions. We've got three main positions that are being added to the budget and added to our staff. We've got 2 paraprofessionals for the special education department to work with our students there, and then a district-wide clerical position that is actually we're looking for it to absolve some of the stipend end positions that we currently have in the district. Capital outlay project. So one of the things we learned going into the capital outlay project this year is that capital outlay projects are limited to that $100,000 but can only be spent in one building, not across multiple buildings. The goal with next year's capital outlay, the 23-24 capital outlay project, is to address some of the building envelope concerns here at EJA. Door entryways, key card swipe access, really hardening our system, hardening our security on the exterior of the building. Cost containment strategies. This is a slide I'm going to continue putting on there year after year, just things that we are doing so that we can keep the cost to taxpayers and the expenditure limits on our end, not to a bare minimum, but to an amount that is doable, okay? So we are a continued member of the RCG Health Trust and RCG Workers' Compensation Consortiums. With that, we collaborate with other districts. We meet as a group of Rensselaer, Columbia, and Greene County schools. We end up getting lower rates, and our consortium itself, we just had our stewardship report last week. Our consortium is thriving. We're doing very well in that. We're meeting any and all deadlines, and anything to do with compliance we are doing very well with as well. Some of the other things we do is cooperative bidding. DCMO BOCES is a big one. We use DCMO BOCES for the diesel fuel bid that goes out every year. We also use different BOCES to work with our cafeteria food and supplies. It's Questar and DCMO. And then we do have coming up a transportation bid as well that our transportation director and myself will be looking into in the coming year to address the need, I'm sure you've seen in the news, where we have to go EV, start buying EV buses in the next few years and be a full-fledged EV fleet by 2035. Intermunicipal agreements, we continue to basically be the gatekeeper of the labor relations intermunicipal agreement. We're currently working with 5 other districts independently that are paying us, and then we are working with FEH BOCES, where in the end, the overall cost of our labor relations specialist is 0 to the district because of the revenue we've been able to generate from that. Special education services, we do continue to have students from other schools come to us to be provided services for which the other districts pay us, similar to us paying other districts. Cross contracts with BOCES, you can see right there, there's 5 examples of what we're doing with BOCES. It's important to note that every time we spend money with BOCES, we get a certain amount of aid back on it. The latest aid ratio that we're receiving is 54.99%. Distance learning, we're continuing our path along the distance learning in the 21st century and getting our students able to take classes that we might not be able to stock a full class here, but they may be able to host elsewhere. We can tap into those resources. We are continuing to increase our mental health services, both through BOCES and in-house. Our Flex program did a presentation recently as well that's along these lines, and that really I thought was rather impressive for a school district our size. And then finally, establishment of a capital reserve that I will get into in just a little bit here. STAR considerations. So STAR's really coming at us in a couple of different ways. We've got the exemption, we've got the STAR credit. The exemption is really just where the state will send the district money to help lessen the tax bills. The credit is where residents will receive a tax bill, and before it is due, the state will send the resident a check, lessening the overall tax burden to the taxpayer. That you really have to look at your individualized tax bill to see which one of those STAR means you do qualify for. Property tax rebates, those are sent directly to the homeowners under certain conditions. I did post more information on these. Again, if you go to our district website into the business office section, you will see a budgeting section, and then in that folder for this year, you will see this presentation. All of these links are active and working. If they're not, please let me know and I'll get it fixed immediately. So, on to this proposition number 2, this capital reserve. We currently have one. It was established in May of 2023, or 2013, I'm sorry. It was up after 10 years. And so with that, we are looking to open up a new one. We are able to have more than one capital reserve. And so with that, what we're looking to do is keep the old one open, let it earn its interest, but establish a new one. The goal of this second capital reserve is to continue adding to the amount of funds we can put towards a capital project. And right there is a list of really what a capital reserve is. Again, I'll speak to quite a bit about this in a little bit. So how is it funded is the biggest question, right? We hear capital reserve, we see the number $5 million, we panic because, okay, my taxes are going up so I can pay another $5 million into a capital reserve. Not so much. A capital reserve is simply funded by money that is underspent in a budget. So for example, if I've got a budget line that I budgeted, let's say $10,000 for, if by year's end I've only used $5,000, we have $5,000 at our disposal to either roll into unassigned fund balance or roll into a capital reserve. We would roll that into a capital reserve because what that will essentially do long term is when we go out for a capital project, it's $5,000 less we will have to say that we need to go to the taxpayers for to fund it. Okay? This is typically funded annually. Those determines are made in conversation with the Board of Education. We will identify what our unassigned fund balance is coming out of the year, and a recommendation will be made to the Board of Education to put X amount of dollars into that capital reserve that will stand for 10 years, not exceed $5 million. Do you guys have any questions on that? No? Okay. Why is this beneficial? Okay, so think back to last year, right? Last year we had some excess funds. We elected to basically take $1 million and allocate it towards a band that we had to pay off in June of 2022. That's $1 million less that we have to pay interest over the life of 15 years. That's $1 million that is out of our account, but in the pocket of somebody else. It's $1 million less that we now need to account for as we are going forward with considering tax rates, considering debt service, considering our day-to-day expenditures within the district. The biggest benefit, in my opinion, is you're earmarking unused budgeted funds. We're not earmarking additional monies from taxpayers, we're earmarking unused budgeted funds. Why did we choose $5 million? We felt that $5 million was the appropriate amount. A lot of it, yes, was due to the fact that that's the popular number among districts currently. We also wanted to throw in there non-inclusive of interest. So if this is sitting in an account and it's at $5 million earning interest, we don't want it to stop if we're earning interest on it. We want it to continue to accumulating interest. This is not going to be funded all at once. We're not going to look at this year's unappropriated fund balance and say, hey, let's just take $5 million, put it in. If we have $5 million, I would be surprised. Secondly, we don't want to dump it all in there at once. Okay? And the limit does not mean we have to maximize it at any given time. Another important piece to note is the only way to expend money out of a capital reserve is by voter approval. That is typically done when we have a capital project vote, public vote, where taxpayers come in and say, yes, we approve this capital project, and no, we don't. And with that, there will be a line item in there to suggest that we take X amount of dollars out of a capital reserve. So the only way to expend that money is taxpayer approval. Does anybody have any questions for me before I move on from capital reserve? Okay. Okay. Board of Education seat vote. Like I said, we've got 3 open seats, and we've got 4 candidates, 4 community members. We've got Ina Griffin Gilzon running for her 2nd term. We've got Sam Anderson running for his 1st term, Jamie Dorr for her 4th term, and Tara Bachner running for her 3rd term. And then we have to talk about the thing that we all hope doesn't happen is if the budget is defeated. If the budget is defeated, we can put either the same vote or budget out there for a revote on June the 14th or an adjusted one. If the budget is again defeated on June the 14th, the Board of Education must adopt what's called a contingency budget. And if you look at the back page of the budget newsletter that was provided to everybody in the mail, there is a column on the postcard all the way to the right that talks about that contingency budget. In short, a contingency budget, you can see right here, would require a 0 tax levy increase or a reduction this year of $563,749. This loss of revenue would require non-contingent cuts within the expenditure budget. Okay? And there is your date and time for the budget vote, Tuesday, May 16th from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. at each of our elementary schools here at EJA and up at CE. That concludes my budget hearing presentation. Does anybody have any questions for me? Okay. Yes, sir. Yep. Mm-hmm. So, I'm just going to repeat the questions so folks, if they want to hear it later. So the question is we are looking to adopt a budget. We're putting a budget before voters, before the state has formally adopted a budget. How would that impact the budget up for approval? Is that correct? Right. Tentatively, yes. Tentatively. Sure. So what they've agreed to. Yep. Does that mean we're getting less on 8 issues or more? That's something that once we get the actual figures, we will be able to assess. And no, everything's tentative until it's finalized, until it's fully enacted. Nothing is 100% firm yet. Correct. Right. Yep. I can get. Yep. So if they allocate more money to our district, right? I think the question you're asking is, will that lessen the tax levy? How will that affect? Okay, so if more money is allocated from the state to the district, it will lessen the amount of appropriated funds coming out of currently the fund balance that the district carries. So in previous conversation, we had talked about a $250,000 appropriated fund balance amount, yes? So if, let's say we are awarded $50,000 more than we were anticipated before. Instead of 250, that number would be 200. That lessens our revenue side by 50. I'm sorry. It maintains a balanced budget, but it doesn't change the number that's approved by voters. And historically speaking, very common practice in the late 2000s, before 2010, the budget was never on time. And then for the last few years, we've been very lucky. The budget was on time, and so we knew these things ahead of time, so that we're not really in unprecedented waters here, but that's how that flow of money would work. We would lessen the unappropriated or the appropriated fund balance amount coming into the budget because that money is now coming in the form of revenue and state aid. Does that help? Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much.